Now let's have a look at the pond. It is getting lower again, but right now what is being taken out is also put in, and every time that there's a longer pause it rises back up. But of course it will be lower because we irrigate at night and also during the day, and at night it's a little bit, but still, and only during the day it will be refilled. So we are getting lower, but then I assume, as I have an idea how this pond looked like when it was dug, we will not pump it completely dry, but we might get very low at the very end. And of course it depends when the rain will come back. So this is an interesting experience that we are making at the moment. But then this is its purpose. So if we have it basically dry and then the rain comes, we have been successful. So that's not a problem. So over there you can see where the water comes in. And that basically used to be the high water mark, there where the pipe ends. I would think this is 1.50 meters that is missing. So it's not that bad, given the overall size of this. It's not yet critical. And there's 1.5 months left until September. So not that huge of a problem. And the rain usually comes at the beginning of September or as late as October. So we might be good. But still, I would love to have more water storage. And there are plans for that, but they take a little bit to be realized. Somebody was asking why we are not using drip irrigation. It's because of that. The idea is to irrigate the whole area, and there should be other plants to the left of the cypress trees. So the cypress trees are the windbreak, and then on both sides we want to cultivate something else. And I'm counting on the seed bank. There is plenty of things, and that includes the Bermuda grass that might germinate. So even if it's just the weeds, and I'm happy to irrigate the weeds because all they do is, they are pioneer species. They help the soil along and prepare it for more advanced species. So this is all welcome. As long as we can make rain, we should. As you know, we are working on our irrigation system, but also a general infrastructure for water and electricity in the farmyard. Here I show you a picture of the water lines, and I'm going to talk you through this a little bit. So first off, there is this dark blue line, and that is the line that is connected to the water tower that sits in what we call A18. So this is basically a gravity-fed system that depends on the pressure that the water column provides. We can use the power of the pump once the tower is completely full, because then this pump will continue to work and provide more water and more pressure. But this is only true if either the other tank, the light blue line, and the two bubbles there where it says 6,000 liters, is also full. If it's not full, we would have to shut down this line to have this high pressure effect. The stars along the dark blue line represent faucets or hydrants so that we can connect something to it. Some of them already exist, the others is planned to be installed. And you might also notice that to the very right, where the solar panel is located, there is also one. That is so that we can connect a hose to it and use the high pressure when the pump is running to clean our solar panels in case that we got a Sahara dust storm or something like that. And to the very top left, you can also see one that is at the very end of our future outdoor workshop between the two containers once we have this built. Of course, the goal is to get the lines into the ground and all the hydrants and faucets installed before we do anything else, so that this is a really done job. The two blue bubbles there represent the 3000 liter water tank that is already there, and we also want to have a second one so that we have a lot more buffer capacity, and that is used exclusively for irrigation. It gets filled from the same well as the water tower, and there is something going on to control which one fills first so that we can decide where the water goes. It's an ongoing process that requires figuring out which devices to use, how to actually interconnect them, and all kinds of industrial automation that I have to learn. At least I have a little bit of a background that helps me, but it is still a steep learning curve, and of course I need to buy the bits and pieces and know before I put in an order what I really want and need. Finally, there is a very large tank that is supposed to be underground. The hole already exists. This is where we are going to build our house once we get to it. It is supposed to hold 10,000 liters, and there will also be a pump that allows us to take the water out of that and make it available for irrigation. So basically it can feed the 6,000 liters that I mentioned before. So this is basically a water reserve. We will use it for the house, for everything that we do inside. Of course, it won't ever be 10,000 liters, but it's a buffer, it is a reserve, and we can reroute this water in case that we're running short. And yes, we do have a broody hen. This is now the first time that we can irrigate the future dog enclosure with the palovnia trees and the grasses by using the more powerful booster pump and also the buffer, the blue tank that I mentioned, and it is looking very nice. As you can clearly hear, the generator is running. It makes a lot of noise, and we are shortly before sunset as I have filmed this. And yes, I hope soon we can have more battery, more energy storage, and then we don't have to do this anymore. It's because of the noise, the hassle, and all the other difficulties. So I hope that we get to replace these batteries soon. We also have an additional tree here, right there ahead of my shadow. So there is another palovnia tree. I would assume, as we have not planted it, that this is an offspring of the tree to the left, and it came out of its root. So here is the original one, pretty tall already. It's the tallest that we have around here, and it appears that it created an offspring. And with the additional moisture, that should work out very well. So every tree, every biomass, every plant is greatly welcome. We might chop them down, but they are all contributing something. What I can also mention, without getting me and the phone wet, that in here we do have a lot of Bermuda grass that is also growing. So I threw out seed before cutting this. I think that was in May or so. And since then it has germinated and is now growing. And I have to be a little bit careful not to get wet. So that distance here, which is certainly some, I would say 8-9 meters, is the radius of the circle around this wobbler. So it's working out very beautifully. And this is the nozzle that has some 700 something liters per hour flow. So that should help to put down a lot of water in a short amount of time. So I just come back from a little walk to fix a leak in our water hose, our pipe. So I used one of those. Thankfully, I was able to reduce the length a little bit and didn't have to spend the one that I just showed you. But this gives me the opportunity to show you a few things. So first of all, that electrical cable is now installed in a better way. So it now is hung up on these fence posts. Basically as a top line. Of course you can do this a lot more interesting. So you could have a metal cable on top of it, which is tensioned and then hanging off of that, instead of using a zip tie. Over time this might be a problem the way it is, but for the time being that is better than to have it on the ground. And the other thing that I can show you is that definitely sun hemp is growing, and so are the sunflowers. There you have one. So this is all working out very well, and it's green and getting greener by the day. Actually I see there ahead a few more. Maybe I can show you them zooming in. It's on the phone again. So there, behind the oak tree, there you see a few taller ones. They are coming along, and over time we should have less need for irrigation water, because there is certainly some water stored in the ground from all the rainfall that we had. But of course they need to get into that with the tap roots. They might not reach it because by now it's gone. But that is why we are doing this, so that when we later plant paulownia trees here, and there will be other species too, so it will not be a paulownia encina quercosilix thing. It is going to be a variety, but step by step. So that should definitely get this well prepared. And the cypress trees, they are getting water at the moment. I will have to wait a little bit for this to have the effect, and then they should also making their taproot, which they do, and then they will also begin to be more upright, because despite the fact that Angel tried to provide them a little bit more support, yeah, there is at least one that is almost fallen over, but that should be fixed relatively easy. And then our windbreak will grow, and by the time we are in spring next year, so basically early May, which is when we got starting planting paulownia trees, this should then definitely provide some protection in case there is this odd wind blowing while we are still in spring. So that is the purpose, and I'm very happy that we did not try to plant paulownia trees over there, because that would have been a challenge. So we rather prepare the area and then plant them. So these are red nozzles. This is almost the highest flow nozzle that is available. There's one more that's white over that, but this is a lot of water. So this is per hour 1200 liters per sprinkler, per wobbler. So this is a lot of water, and just in that maybe 15 minutes that it took me to fix the problem further down, yes, is already pretty wet. So I think I can now turn this off again and turn it on in maybe 2 days again. I don't want to overwater these cypress trees because they are made for this climate, and they should go into the ground, which is soft now because Angel used the excavator here. And then I can finally turn this on again. So let's do that. So this is still manual, but the bits and pieces are showing up. So this soon will also be a automated system, so that I don't have to do this anymore. Actually, before I do this, I should turn off the pump. So let me do that first. There is another detail that I can share with you. So the pipe that we have running here is the old one from the days when we needed it for drinking water for the animals. And so this is not the high pressure pipe that we are now supposed to use. So it is something unrated, let's put it this way. And the new one is rated for 10 bar. I don't know what that means in PSI. And we have to replace this step by step. So right now, every time it bursts, we fix it and then replace it. And over time, we will then have a high pressure line. The reason why we do it that way is time, and why fix a broken system. So never touch a working system like that. And so that is one reason, and the other is we might have to install more of these shut-off valves at T-pieces, like the one that you can see there. And we don't know yet where we will need irrigation. So therefore, let's do this on an on-demand basis. And now that the pipe is closed and there is no escape for the water further down, this is now starting to wobble. So this is now getting wet here, as it is supposed to be. I do have to admit that we went a little bit on the edge here with the whole thing. So this is the lowest flow nozzle on one hand, and it is also really on the edge when it comes to the quantity of wobblers that we have connected. And once we plant the trees, we will redesign this a little bit and probably have a slightly different system so that we have less wobblers. That's one way. Or we replace the pump. So there is a replacement model that puts out 8,000 liters per minute per hour instead of 2,500, and then we could even have longer lines. So it depends a little bit. We have to think about this. It's a 2,000 something euro investment to replace that pump, and then we can save on other things depending on what we want to achieve. Because right now we have 8 lines, and this is just enough for both fields. And maybe we want to play this in a slightly different way. But in general, the idea is to have the palovnia trees planted in rows between the irrigation, but still have enough space so that we can run a chicken tractor. Probably will be Saskowicz style instead of the Salatin style. I think people are a little bit familiar with that. So the Salatin style is that flat thing, while the other style is almost like a tent, and it goes up first and has a door. And these, they might be better suited because they are less wide. But of course we can build the other ones the same way. So we will see. But the Saskowicz style chicken tractors, they might be better for us because there is a lot more air going through instead of the other ones, which are pretty low and closed, and in summer it might be a problem. So we will see when we come to that point. but it will definitely be after the palovnia trees that we are going to plant next year in May have grown up a little bit. So this is not something for the next 2 or 3 months. There's also something else that I can tell you guys. So these many strings are not hot. I could do this, but they do the trick. But over here, the wire that is in the middle and also the strings that are on the top at the bottom, they are now connected to the energizer. So that one here is hot. This is the positive wire and everything else is the negative wire. And now there are 4 wires in total, or 4 strings, depending on how you want to call it. And that tells the horses, please do not step in here. They have been sneaking underneath because they have learned that they can lift this up. But now they have learned, I guess a few days ago, that this is not a good idea anymore, because now there will be a shock. And 1 is enough so that everybody gets the message. So now this area is truly excluded. They have plenty of standing hay all around, but they should not start foraging on these new plants until we give them permission to do so, which might be once these things have flowered and made seeds, because that's also the thing. We want to have them reseed so that they will come up next year in between the palovnia trees. Once they have set seed, we might mow them also, which is why we got the BCS mower attachment. But we can also use this for the horses. It depends a little bit on the situation when we come to that point. But in general, if we can use this material as mulch that is now growing here on site, that would be quite nice. Because we need to feed our soil. Our soil is starving. So that's soil food being grown. And as we irrigate right now, let's also have a look at the pond. And note there is Bermuda grass all over. These horses like to roam around and won't stay in one place to eat everything. All these grasses can regrow a lot easier than when it were cattle, cows. So horses definitely, in our case, do a much better job at helping us to restore this land than cattle would. So here is the pond, and it doesn't look that bad. Of course, it is a lot lower than in the beginning. I would say 1.50 m at least, or maybe 180. But then you can see there to the left. Let's zoom in a little bit. So there you see some plants that have been submerged. They had established themselves before the pond really filled up. So we are not at a very bad point. So this is very nice. And we are still getting something from the well down at the outflow of the water reservoir. So it is all the time being refilled. And I would also think it is being refilled from below, because that is what happened when we dug it in the first place. And some of you also talked about these guys here. Yes. So we could make an effort and run around and dig them up and do whatever things, but then we are not running cattle. And therefore, it doesn't really matter, and the horses do know not to eat this. And it exists all over the place. So if I were to go over there, wherever there's some moisture and it can grow, it also exists. So this would be a Sisyphus task to actually get rid of this. Of course, if we were now ranchers and the most important thing is to keep our livestock well, then I probably would say something different. But it's not our case, and I believe the more we change this towards more and more plants, the more the ecological succession will take care of that. Because right now they can grow because the conditions are nice. They protect themselves from being eaten by being poisonous, but eventually they won't like it here anymore. So I think, because we are changing the whole the whole thing towards something that is then a little bit better and denser forest. So I think that's not a huge problem. And they do exist around here, so there is seeds all over. So if I remove a couple of hundred here on my end, they still exist. So there's really nothing that I can do to really solve the problem by exterminating them. I won't achieve that. So now that I see this cable here, so I'm still thinking about how to do this, but originally, and still the idea is to have this cable along that fence line here and then to the left. The problem is I want to have the smart devices that turn on the two pumps, the one that is there where the solar panel is, inside of that well, and also the one that is here inside of the pond. I want to have the two relays that control these pumps sit there at that solar panel post, that mast. But I still have to decide which devices to use for that. And then of course I want this well protected, not be in full sun, because these relays are getting pretty hot. So 50 degrees Celsius is really nothing unusual, and that is inside of the cortijo. So they are rated all the way up to 85 degrees Celsius, but I rather have them in a box that sits in a shade and can dissipate the thermal energy somehow. So I am researching and thinking about what material to use and how to do this, so that this lasts a long time and never gets to the edge of its rating.